I think it's important for a home designer to go out to the house a couple of times or during specific phases so they can say, okay, this is how I had drawn this. This is what they ended up doing with it. I've had people bring the plan to me that the designer is not present and cannot be called because it didn't end well during their design process. And I honestly just don't even want to take those jobs. But he said to me, you need to make yourself marketable. You need to learn skills that makes yourself a marketable employee. Yeah. So that if by chance you end up losing your job here, you've learned some skills that make it so that you can go do something else for a different company or for yourself. The very first he said that, I sort of took it as a threat, but within about 30 seconds, I thought, no, this is actually some really, really good advice.
Welcome to Not a Licensed Architect, the podcast for residential designers out there doing the real work without the license and sometimes without the credit. I'm your host, Stephanie Thatcher, and if you've ever felt like you should be licensed to be taken seriously, but you're still showing up every day, designing real homes that real people actually live in, this is the show for you. Here, we get honest about the struggles, but even more importantly, we're talking about solutions, better floor plans, smarter business moves, and the confidence to finally own your role in the residential construction industry. So if you're ready to level up, lead your clients like the pro that you are, and finally own the fact that you don't need a license to design incredible homes, this is the podcast you've been looking for. Let's go. Okay, well, thanks for joining me. Today I have with me a blast from the past for me. This is my good friend, Garrett Greenhalgh. And I never really quite know how to say your last name, to be honest with you.
That was right. You got it.
I'm always like, should I be?
Nope. Just like you said, silent.
Yep, that's what I thought. Okay, just wanted to make sure. I've got some other friends with some silent letters in their names, and you just have to make sure. I want to make sure we get it right. Garrett Greenhalgh. And you own
GPD Builders.
GPD.
Yep.
Okay.
My dad's company was Greenhalgh Planning and Development. I sort of wanted to honor that. So I went with GPD.
Cool. So that I didn't know that. That's just like based on his business then.
Yeah. It's a completely separate business, but I don't know. I grew up in the business and I'm not taking over his business, but I still wanted to honor it. So GPD.
That's cool. Wait, so where was he located?
I grew up in Salt Lake area.
Okay.
But we all through junior high and high school, we were building custom homes in Park City. Nice. I never built one house in the Salt Lake Valley. Well, maybe I did, but the majority of them were up in Park City.
And so they were mostly high-end custom homes.
Yes.
In Park City.
Yep. High-end custom homes. Yep.
And you said you dabbled a little bit in commercial, working for some people, but
yeah, after high school, he almost went exclusively commercial. After my high school, he went exclusively commercial, and so I got a lot of experience building dentist offices. That's what he specialized in. So that's what I did after high school.
Okay, and then just for the listeners here, Garrett and I worked together at the same builders, at the same company, I guess, working for some builders. And we were both there for about the same amount of time. I just started a little bit ahead of you and you quit a little bit behind me. So probably our time was pretty equal.
Yep. Pretty close, I think.
But yeah, we both kind of went out on our own at about the same time. And how has the experience been for you so far? Good?
Yeah, good. Really good. I mean, it was good to work for a production builder because you got just a ton of experience. I'm sure the same with you. Yep. I don't know how many plans you drew, but it was probably in the hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah.
And I built hundreds of houses. So it was really, really good experience. Just to get so much exposure.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. and you know what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do, and ultimately I my heart was in the custom world. So it was time to go, and I started that about 7 years ago, back into my roots, building custom homes. So
Okay, so we talk about working for production builder, but we both ended up having our companies focus on custom homes. So tell me, what about custom drew you back?
well, I mean, it allows you to be more creative. I'm sure it's the same with you. If you're just building the same thing over and over again, it's great for the experience, but it's not something that you're super excited about putting your stamp on, your name on. It's just another cookie cutter house,
Well,
and
and it doesn't show your diversity as well.
right. Yeah. Well, and yeah, and just after you're done with the building a large custom home, you can just sit back and be like, that's something I'm proud of. I built that, and there was a custom aspect, or a custom branch to the company that we worked for as well, and I really enjoyed that much better.
Yeah, you kind of were the main superintendent for that, or
Yeah,
the company, weren't you?
yeah, I did that for a while. I mean, I started off in the semi-custom production, I guess, well, whatever, and then I sort of took over that custom branch of the company, and I really just enjoyed that a lot. So uh anyways, it's just something that you can be more creative on. There's problem solving that
Yep.
which is always, it can be challenging, but it's also enjoyable to be able to find problems and say, okay, we can come up with the right solution to this. And um
Huh.
it,
That's
it's
that's a fun perspective because I feel like not all builders, um, I've talked to other builders too, and I feel like not all builders have that mentality or that mindset approach to this is fun. I like solving the problems. Like bring on, I've had builders who have told me, oh, this is fun, because I'm always like apologizing, like, I'm sorry, this is so difficult, or I'm making this really challenging or whatever. And the builders I like to work with are the ones who like bring it on. I love things
yeah,
that are different and challenging and unique and whatever. And so
yeah, if it was just the same thing every day, you never had to think about anything, then you might as well just be back to building production homes that don't change, and it's the same one 20 times or whatever. So there's going to be aspects to a production home that you're going to have to figure out, to
you mean to
make
a
it work.
custom home.
Oh, sorry, a custom home, yes.
Yeah.
And as well, I mean, the clients as well, they may want to change things, and sometimes they can't decide how they want something to look until they're looking at it in their 3D, standing in the house, and
Yeah.
and they're always apologetic about it. But I'm like, well, some people can't visualize it, and you have to be able to see it in person before you can decide that you might want to change it. So I'm never discouraging that. Obviously there's a cost, both in time and money, to that most of the time, but I never discourage that. I want them to get what they want, which sometimes there's changes. So
Yeah. Okay, so do you bring any of the production side of it, anything that you learned or that you implemented, building production homes? Has there been anything that you've kind of like assimilated into custom builds?
well, I think that, coming from the production, again, it's just all of the stuff that should be just standard knowledge, that is the general process on everything. I mean, the last 3 years I worked for the production builder. A lot of my job had to do with writing processes and making sure that we had standard procedures for everything,
No.
which was extremely beneficial in saying, okay, this is how it's supposed to go every time. And
I
you
didn't
and
know
you
you
may
did that.
yeah, it was, I enjoyed that part of the, I mean, I didn't, if I would have told myself that 5 years ago, I would, or 20 years ago, I would have said I would never enjoy doing that. But I actually liked having the processes all lined up, and this is how it's supposed to be. and that's just like the base of it. After that, you get into, that those things are the same on almost every house you build. And so if you have that down, then moving on to the custom aspects of it, or the problem solving, or the changes if need be, that's all just the fun stuff that's past the standard process every time.
So do you feel like, having built out some of those SOPs for the builder, do you feel like that transferred over into getting your business up and running smoother, faster?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For better or worse, the experience that I gained in that company, that made it so that I knew how things should run every time, creating those processes for myself. And then I also worked in some of the finance department of the company as well. It was an invaluable experience to be able to start up my own business, for sure. I can't say enough about that education.
Right? It was a total education. That's like me too. Like, I knew the program that we use, the CAD program. I had drafted and designed custom homes using that CAD program before, like I knew the lingo, I knew the stuff. But when I started working there, that's when my real education began.
Yeah.
Like, I just learned so much.
Yeah, and that's the same. I mean, I don't know how many houses I built with my dad prior to this, but having your dad hold your hand along the way versus being thrown into it and saying, "Good luck.
Yep.
This is your thing. You have to do it now." I mean, that's just how it had to be in order to get to the next step. And there were some growing pains there for sure, and it was stressful and it was difficult, but it was the best education I ever received. So
yeah, I mean, I guess without getting too philosophical about life in general, but like, I find that that's typically true in most things, where it's just like, until all responsibility lands squarely on your shoulders, and like, you're the one that people are going to come back to if something goes wrong, and all the things, like, until you're in that position, I feel like you don't really pay attention.
yeah, no, I agree. And some of it is that somebody has to have the patience to let you make mistakes.
Yeah.
As well. So, and because you're learning on those mistakes, and I would hope that I made the company more money than I cost the company.
Well,
but making those mistakes was something you learn from, and you move on, and you don't do it the next time.
Do you remember any specific mistakes that you made?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, because I always say that, like, I felt like I thought I was a good employee until I became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I kind of was a little bit stinky. Like, I could have been a lot better.
Yeah. I think you tried to always be spot on, and for the most part, you either succeeded or you fooled everybody really well, because we all thought that you were really good and that you never made any mistakes.
Well, and I'm talking about too, even just like being committed to the job, and like learning more skills and different things like that. Like, I did try to do good work for sure, and produce quality work. So I appreciate you saying that. But I look back and I think, I I felt like, when I look back, I feel like I had kind of an entitled mentality, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, I had felt like, for me, there were two superintendents that were hired at the beginning of the company. You came in sort of right at the beginning of this new company. You had drawn some of the custom plans, but more or less, we both sort of started in at the beginning of the new production branch of the company, because they had been doing custom homes and whatever before this. And then they said, okay, let's start a production branch. And both you and me were sort of started in there at that same time.
Yeah.
And when we started in there, there was two superintendents that were hired at the same time, and then the market started crashing. This is in 2008 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the CFO calling me into his office, and he basically said, look, we're keeping you and we're letting go of the other guy. And I said, oh, that's sort of crazy. I don't know if it ultimately it probably was because I was the less expensive employee. I'd like to think that it was because I was doing a good job, but more or less it was probably because I was the less expensive employee. But he gave me some of the best advice that anybody had given me at the time. I mean, I think I was supposed to be a little bit scared that my job was also on the line, but he said to me, you need to make yourself marketable. You need to learn skills that makes yourself a marketable employee.
Yes.
So that if by chance you end up losing your job here, you've learned some skills that make it so that you can go do something else for a different company or for yourself. And at the very first he said that, I sort of took it as a threat, but within about 30 seconds I thought, no, this is actually some really, really good advice.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm like taking notes because I love that. I mean, whether it was like really intentional or not, I love that he said that to you, because I feel like a good employee would say something like that to all of their a good employer would say that to all of their employees. Mostly just because that's where I feel like I lacked, because I came in, I feel like kind of after a while, I felt like I had this attitude of like, I'm really good, but they're not really valuing me. And, and instead of looking at, I think when you're looking to have those marketable skills, then you're adding value to the company that you work for, because you've taken the initiative on your own to, level up and to gain the skills that make you a better employee. But also it's like, it keeps you as a good investment for the company. Right. And it's also it's such a good, like kind of like give, I don't know the right word I'm trying to say, but like by you leveling up, it's good for the company, but it's also good for you, also good for the company. Like there's just this whole back and forth thing where it's just like you're more valuable. So hopefully they respect that. And if you somehow like happen to need to go out or they let go of you or whatever, you are marketable. But anyway, you're adding benefit to the company and hopefully they're reciprocating, and it just goes like both ways.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I think this particular company did very well is they hired very well. They hired people with really good work ethic, with good talent. Like very few employees that have ever come through there, I would have said wasn't worth it. Like they knew, I mean, they had a knack for finding people that would take ownership of it, and that's what they preached is take ownership, and I felt that the more I took ownership, the more ownership they gave me, which is where I wanted to be anyway. I wanted the responsibility. I didn't want somebody trying to babysit me. I wanted to say, just let me go do my thing and I'll go do it, and I'll do a good job, and just leave me alone and let me do it. And the more I took that, the more they gave it to me, which made me happier and made them more money. So
that you were more productive. I do think that that's huge. That's key, because now that you mention it, like I've never really put it into, concrete thought or words or anything, but in my department, overseeing the, production of the floor plans and different things, developing the designs for those floor plans. From day one, they did not micromanage me at all.
Yeah.
To the point that it was like, I set my own schedule. I told them when I was going to come into work and how many hours I was going to work. And by the way, I need to take this time off to go watch my kid at his school program or whatever, like they were awesome that way. But on that same note, I developed the baseline and the like the policies and stuff for the drafting department. And
Right.
and they didn't do that. They didn't ask me to, but I saw that it was a need and it was well received. So maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit.
I don't think you are. I think you need to give yourself more credit.
No, but truly, I mean, like I see what I put into my own business, and if I had put this much effort and care into their business, I would have been a better employee. That
Yeah.
fact is still there.
Well, and I think that's when people get to the point where they're saying, I am putting everything that I have into the company that I work for. That's usually when people say, and why am I not doing this myself?
Yeah. Yes.
I think you have to get comfortable enough with it, and a good employer probably also knows I'm going to basically train you to be as if you were the owner of this company, and we'll hold on to you as long as we can. But
Yeah.
you'd have to be naive to think that once somebody learns all those things and feels comfortable with it, and I guess has enough guts to go out and do it themselves, they're eventually going to.
Yeah.
But you might as well take advantage of a good, hardworking employee that treats the company like their own while you have them.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Okay, so in all those plans that you've worked off of, have you had much experience working off of floor plans that were drawn by a licensed architect or from an architectural firm?
Only through commercial.
Okay.
A lot of the jurisdictions require an actual licensed architect to stamp the commercial plans.
Yes.
My dad drew all of his own custom home plans, and he
Really?
drew the majority of the dental office plans
but
that
we're
we did as well.
talking how long ago? Like 30 years
I
ago?
mean, the last one he drew was probably 2 years ago. It was a giant building,
Really?
down in Spanish Fork, but he had to. Still, some jurisdictions require you to get not only a structural engineer to stamp it, but also an architect to
Yeah.
stamp it, and an electrical engineer to stamp it, and an HVAC engineer to stamp it. Like a lot of those commercial ones have multiple requirements.
Yep.
Some jurisdictions say, well, if you draw the plan, we're already going to have the structural engineer stamp it, and we're already going to have all of these other people stamp it. Why would we require you to have an architect stamp it at that point? Well, and the last commercial job that I did myself, I thought the same thing. Why did we have to go to the architect when if we drew the plans and we have all these other people stamp it? What's really the point of having the architect stamp it?
Yeah, that is interesting.
It was only mostly because the city requires it, and it's just basically to cover themselves.
I was going to say it's probably a huge liability thing more than anything.
Yeah.
Just,
right.
That person is going to take the brunt of any sort of probably lawsuit or anything.
Right. Well, and that's the same with structural engineers. There's even in a lot of house plans, you don't technically have to have a structural engineer stamp everything for you, because the building officials can go off of the building code, which is what the structural engineer is supposed to be doing. You can build a house without a structural engineer. However, I've found it's much easier just to say, we're just going to have a structural engineer stamp it, so that it just makes it faster. It gets it through the process faster. It means that they don't have to ask so many questions.
Yeah.
I don't have to guess on things. It's all written out for me on the structural aspect of it.
Okay.
And so structural engineers, I'm a big fan of. I've never tried to push a house through without a structural engineer. Same thing, my own liability, and it just makes it easier for me.
Okay, so I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much of what like our state requires or our jurisdiction, because we're, hopefully people from all over the country are listening to this. And so it depends on your local jurisdiction for sure on like what is required that way. But I do like one thing that you said there. You said, I like having a structural engineer stamp the plans because then I don't have to guess. So to me, that opens up the perfect, like that is the perfect segue into what are the plans missing? And you've seen my plans because you had to work off of my plans for years, but you've also seen some of my plans from me being on my own and some of the custom work that I've done. So this is my chance to pick your brain. Like, what more can be done?
Well, I guess you had a list of questions that you were asking. I wrote down a couple of things. What do I wish that
Yeah.
all home designers would do? The one of the biggest things is congruency from one page to the next. Making sure that the footing page and the foundation page line up, that from the foundation to the framing page, those all line up, and a lot of just that. Just make sure every page is basically the same. And maybe the software now is easier and sort of does that for you. But on the last commercial job that I did, we didn't draw the plans ourselves. Somebody else drew it. It was actually the architect that drew it. And where he had a bearing wall, that was a foundation that had some 7/8 bolts coming out of the ground, and a wall had to be exactly specifically on that exact dead point, but the trusses that he drew were off by 2 inches, and it made it so that we basically had that wall going. It had to be out of square in order to hit the bolts and hit the foundation below, and then hit the trusses up above on the exact location.
Yeah, so it couldn't be plumb.
No, it couldn't be plumb. And so we fudged it as much as we could and then furred it out to level it up as much as possible, but it still ended up a half an inch out of level, and there was nothing that we could do about it. That was so frustrating to say, I can't miss my bolts. You can't very easily drill a 3-foot deep hole down into the concrete to add a new bolt to it, because that's how long these things were. Wow. And so you were basically stuck with what the architect had given us at that point, and it was frustrating. And again, like I said, we fixed it the best we could and tried to level it up everywhere we possibly could. And most people probably wouldn't have, at this point, couldn't notice it because it was a half inch in a 12-foot wall. So that spread out pretty far, but it was still frustrating that you want to do something well and you couldn't because somebody messed up, not making sure that all the pages lined up. Right?
Yeah. Okay, so I love that alignment from floor to floor. And yeah, for sure, anybody who has any skill using CAD, I mean, like my CAD program has what they call like an overlay feature. So I can basically lay the sheets over top of each other and look through them basically to see what's below. And like I could even print it that way for you if you wanted to see. It's crazy how things get just shifted as you design, but it is something that comes through in the final review of like, check that overlay and make sure that you've got enough room for the stairwell, or that, like the exterior walls line up with the foundation walls, all those things. Okay. I love that. I preach that. I think that's awesome. What else?
The next thing I had on my list was, things are going to go wrong, or clients are going to want to change things, or there might be a dimension that's missed. I love being able to call my designer and say, hey, I don't have this dimension. Can you tell me what it is? And having that open communication between the builder and the designer is super useful. And sometimes it's not that there was a dimension that was missed. Sometimes it's that, hey, we need to move something, and it's going to be way easier for you to just tell me what that is than try to have me figure out what it should be. Right. And so that's it. Just being able to call you and have you tell me, oh, this is what I've got on my page or whatever. Or to say, hey, can you draw me up some options? They might want to change the layout of their kitchen. I have a couple of ideas, but what do you have now that they're standing in the area and can visualize it, they might want to change something, or and to say, can you draw me up a couple of options on a page, and we can show them and have them look at it, and even do some 3D modeling and everything. It's extremely helpful for the clients to be able to see that in order to make a decision as well. And I would hope that if it's a large enough thing, we would obviously say we're going to charge for this. But a lot of times it's something that can be done in 30 seconds and here it is and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that's the cool thing. I love that you're open to having that dialogue back and forth with the designer, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy working with you still to this day, because I'm always looking for builders who are collaborative, who want to work things out, and they see the value and the benefit of designing something kind of ahead of time on paper, and like, let's explore all of our options before we've got, construction going on and walls being built and schedules that need to be kept and different things like that. And so I think it's critical to have collaboration in the whole process, especially if we want our clients and the homeowners to have an enjoyable experience. If we're not collaborating between the different professionals that are working on the project, then it's too isolated. It's too much, like each individual job is siloed, and you just can't have that because there's too many integrated pieces when you're building a home,
Right. And that's what that comes back to ownership again. I'm not one that likes to micromanage my subcontractors either. They are the professionals in their field. I have to know a little bit about all of their fields. But
you have to know enough to catch, a problem, because
right.
There is some value to you being a general contractor. Right. Enough about all the different areas that, like any guy on the street doesn't know.
Right. But even if I have an idea about how I think something should be fixed, my first question is always, how do you think we should fix this?
I love that.
You're the professional here. What do you think we should do here? And the majority of the time, they either come up with what I was already thinking we should do, or they come up with something that's even better. And I said, great, that sounds good. That's why you're the professional, and that's why I'm hiring good people.
Exactly. So, and, that's why I thought I would carry over a bunch of details from, working for the builders. I thought I would carry those into my personal work, running my own business. And I was surprised at the things that I let go of. And what it boiled down to was, I think you were involved with this experience. There was one time when we were trying to figure out how to frame a wall between a garage and a house, and the like living quarters on a slab on grade house. And I remember, I think both owners were there, the estimator was there, superintendent, you are like me, and then like the framer. So I think there were at least 6 people in this conversation, and I'm listening because I've drawn it a certain way, and everybody's offering their ideas and their input and stuff. And I swear everybody had a different way, a different method, a different version of how this is accomplished. And I'm like, they all work, every single one is right. It can be done, but what's the best one? And so it really opened my eyes to the fact that there is not just one way to skin this cat,
No.
There's so many different solutions. And so that's when I realized, mostly when I'm designing the floor plans, I don't know who the builder is going to be. I try to encourage my clients to bring a builder with them or whatever, or I invite them to reach out to some of my favorites. And when we're collaborating, it's just amazing how much more we can get accomplished. And we don't have to have everything spelled out on the floor plans. I don't have to have all those details and whatever. And, you're going to build it differently than the other general contractor who might bid it out. And so if I try to specify things to be built an exact way, then you guys you might not agree with it because there's another different, better way. And so anyway, I just find that super fascinating. But on that note, should there be more detailed drawings and stuff like that, cross section.
Well, like a lot of that, sometimes the cross sections are extremely valuable when you have to get all the measurements just right, or like a custom staircase or whatever. Or, sometimes the cross sections give you information that you would spend hours figuring out otherwise, but it's all right there. How the dimensions of how everything should line up are very valuable, and sometimes, I mean, you don't have to spell out everything because, like you said, everybody's going to build that just a little bit different. And a lot of times I can figure something else out on site faster than it would take you to draw a detail on it. And you're like, well, I don't know how they're going to build this, so why should I draw a detail on it if I have no idea how they're actually going to do it? Well, that's fine, because we are going to figure that out on site anyways. That's sort of our job, is to figure that on site. But in some cases, when you already know how, I mean, floor to floor, how walls need to line up, so that the trusses work on them. If there's different wall heights for different trusses and whatever, sometimes that's very beneficial to have as well. Because sometimes you're also sending it to the truss designer, and he's like, well, I don't know, is that a 12-foot wall or is that a 9-foot wall? Right. Am I supposed to draw these trusses so that they sit down on it, or so that they're up above it or whatever? Wall heights are probably just lining those things up. If you have to if those have to go a specific way for everybody to be on the same page, then those cross sections are great. But there's other times where they're like, here is a set of custom stairs we're doing. Like right now, the one I'm working on right now has a custom set of stairs in it that has a big metal beam that goes down the middle, and we didn't exactly know how we were going to put all that together, and you wouldn't know how to put all that together, and the designer didn't give us a cross section on it, and that was fine, because you had to basically have it all set out there, have the space built before you could decide on how exactly that needed to come together.
So was it like a floating staircase with one center, like metal stringer, and the treads were all like floating essentially?
Yep.
Like
exactly. Yep.
So to me, I feel like that's actually even beyond, like, it's not the framer, it's not necessarily you, but it's more of the fabrication shop, the welding shop that's putting together that support structure.
Exactly. Whoever's welding that is going to say, this is how I want this to come together. This is what I have to do to make it work. Yeah. And they will probably draw up their own detail on it.
They're going to go out on site. They're going to measure what is existing finished slab to finished floor and how many treads and risers and stuff that they need. And they're going to calculate it all out for what's available space.
Right. And that brings me to my next point.
Okay.
I think it's important for a home designer to go out to the house a couple of times during the process or during specific phases, so they can say, okay, this is how I had drawn this. This is what they ended up doing with it. I'll know next time I need to do this differently, or I can ask them, well, this is how I had drawn it, but you did it this way. Why did you do it that way? Should I have drawn it differently?
Okay, that's the one thing I don't do. After I've done a site visit, I should call up the homeowner or the builder or whatever and be like, hey, I noticed a couple of things. Can you help me figure it out? Like, tell me what went on, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you walk into a house and you see it's done differently than the way you had drawn it, it's probably good feedback for yourself to say, is it just something that you decided to do differently? Or is it something that wasn't working based on how I drew it, that I need to draw it differently? Because you might draw it 10 times after that, which means 10 other people have to figure it out, right?
Yes. And I guess I think I always just assume that somebody's going to give me that feedback without me like reaching out. But again, this is part of why I put together this podcast, is so I can get that feedback. It's hard to take the time. You're not going to take the time and, I better tell Stephanie that this didn't work out the way that she thought it would, It's on me. I need to reach out and be the one that's asking the questions.
Well,
For
because
sure.
most of the time as a builder, I'm like, well, it's not that big of a deal. We saw something, we fixed it. It didn't, it works now. I don't need to call up somebody and say, hey, you messed this up. It's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
But it's also on my responsibility. If I don't call you on something that I'm like, okay, this might be designed the same on the next house that
Yeah.
changes for me, I better see something so that I don't have to, fix something that my framers did wrong again because it wasn't drawn correctly or whatever.
You
So
know,
it's on both of us. It's not just you. If I want to be a team player,
okay, that's
and
fair.
I'm worried about offending you, but because hey, this didn't work out, but it's not about offending. It's
There
about
is no offense.
making it
Yeah.
better for both of us the
Mhm.
next time around, right?
I think that's key. I think that, and honestly, every time I've talked to anybody in who has worries or concerns about the industry, I'm like, you know what? Everybody I've worked with, every contractor, every subcontractor, every tradesperson, like everybody that I've talked to has always been so gracious. And I have felt like this has been the most collaborative career that I have ever heard about. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe it's because it's the nature of the beast that it's not just one person building a house, it's lots of people. And so maybe that's just what has to happen. We have to communicate with each other. Now, I'm not naive enough to believe that there aren't any problems between the trades or whatever, that there aren't some individuals who like keep everything close to themselves and they don't want to share and they don't want to collaborate and they leave everybody hanging or whatever. But in my experience, everybody that I've ever asked a question of or asked for feedback from has been more than willing to give it to me. And
yeah.
like, I don't think I would be where I am if it hadn't been for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I mean, that communication is key between the designer and the builder, between the designer and the homeowner, between the builder and the homeowner. If everybody could just say, hey, if something goes wrong, we need to figure out how to fix it, or hey, let's change something. I think that that line of communication is super key.
Yeah.
So I've also had jobs that I've done where the designer was not present, didn't want anything to do with it after they said, here's my plan,
Yeah.
good luck with it. Like I've
Yeah.
had people bring plans to me and they say, well, here's the plan. I had a designer draw it. It didn't go well with them. We ended up in a fight, so I can't talk to them anymore. They charged me this
Oh.
or that, and I mean, this has happened 2 or 3 different times where I've had people bring the plan to me that the designer is not present and cannot be called because it didn't end well during their design process. And I
That's
honestly just don't
tragic.
even want to. I don't even want to take those jobs. I right away I'm like, oh, I'm only going to take this job if I absolutely have to, because I don't want to have that line of communication cut off because I depend on that.
Yeah. Okay. To me, that's a couple of red flags, actually. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's either a red flag because the designer doesn't have their business structured well and they don't have systems and processes in place, right? Or something,
right,
or they don't have good communication skills. But it can
right.
also be a red flag for the homeowners. They
It could
might
be.
be clients that you don't want to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah, both it could be absolutely both sides of that. And for both of those reasons, I'm doing a lot of homework before I proceed with that job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it could, you only hear one side of the story. It could
Yep.
just as easily have been the client that was causing the issue.
Yep.
That's why I just, if at all possible, I like to be involved at the design phase. And I don't even ever charge anything on top of uh, I don't charge anything on my end for what the designer and the client do together. I just say, here's a designer, go to them, they'll draw your plan, communicate with them, but I will be here if you have any questions or if you need any suggestions or
Feedback.
whatever you
Yep.
need.
Mhm.
And then give me the plan and I'll check through it and give you my suggestions again, and you can go back and revise anything. But um we're all three of us working on it together. Those are the ones that work out well.
I feel like those are the best experiences. So if any homeowner were listening to this, that would be the number one recommendation is just like build your team, find people who are good at the collaboration, who invite and welcome and champion the collaboration, who want that as a part of their experience. I do think that historically, it has been like more of a passing of the baton kind of experience from one professional to the next, because at least this is just my perception, I guess, from my father-in-law, who was a general contractor. When I've mentioned some of the things that I'm doing, or that, like, I want more feedback from the builders and stuff, and he's like, why? Like, we just figure it out. And I just think, but that's so sad. Like, you shouldn't have to always be the scapegoat for me doing
Yeah.
work. Like, if we could collaborate and I could get your feedback, then you wouldn't always have to pick up the pieces where I failed, you know? And so, but I just think that back in the day, I mean, like, communication was harder because we didn't, I mean, look at us now. We've got video conferencing, and we have email, and we have texting, and we have cell phones that we can take on site with us and whatever. And so it's a lot easier. But I think back in the day, they just didn't have those opportunities. And so they were used to working a little bit more isolated.
Right. Well, and again, I mean, the level of trust between the builder and the client and the designer is also huge. We may never have to talk again
Right.
everything might be like, okay, we talked at the beginning. That's the whole reason to have a plan. We talked through it at the beginning. We're all on the same page.
We're good.
We're all happy with what it looks like. We're fine with it, you may never need to talk to them through the whole process, right?
Yeah.
But being able, I mean, which is just, you've taken care of the communication up front. It's not that you didn't communicate, it's you've taken care of it up front.
Yes.
And what is that? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Yep.
You've done that right at the beginning, so you don't have to figure it out later. And the little things are probably not a big deal, right? Anyways, knowing people and being able to trust who's designing your house for you, so that you don't even have to question it, is comforting for the builder as well. I already know how you design houses. I already know they're going to be beautiful. I'm not going to have any problems with it. If a problem does arise, though, you are there that I can ask you questions, and we're all good, right?
Yep.
So
yep. I think I think that's perfect. And I think that anybody who is building a home, or others who design homes, that forward vision, that looking ahead, kind of like trying to look into a crystal ball and seeing the future or whatever. I think those are the best the best professionals that you want, like, in your arena with you, just fighting that fight. Hopefully it's not a battle. Hopefully it's not a fight, but because they're looking ahead, they have that vision to see what's going to come if we pursue, this path, or if we take this course of action. This is going to be the end result for you. And it might be the end result for the homeowners 10 years from now, but a good builder will see that ahead of time and help them to kind of hopefully avoid pitfalls and stuff. That's the way I look at it.
Right. Yeah, me too.
And hopefully the designer has that same mentality. Okay, so I've got your 3 takeaways. Well, actually, I wrote down 4, I think. Well, the first one was just the advice that you got at work. I love that. Make yourself marketable.
Yeah.
So be a value added individual, like somebody who's always looking to add value. I think that even though that's not necessarily like a drafting or technical skill set or whatever, I think that's applicable to almost anybody. Make yourself marketable. But specifically to floor plans and to the design industry, you gave us that congruency. I love that word, or that alignment from floor to floor, making sure things work from the very foundation level, literally to the roof, that it all is aligned properly. Note wall heights and the details that people need to have included in cross sections and different things like that. And then site visits during construction. Super telling, super informative, and you can get a lot of good feedback that way. Can you think of anything else that you would add? I'm sure
I don't think so. Those are my I guess those are my big key topics. But I've been lucky enough to to work with designers that already do these things, for the most part, and you don't really realize how lucky you are until you get a plan from somebody else who isn't doing these things. So I have my preferred designers for sure, right? And you have your preferred builders for sure as well, that you know are going to communicate well with you. But I it's just a comforting feeling to have that level of trust with your designer, that you know they're watching out for you.
Yeah.
They have your back. They're trying to make your job easier, right? That's a huge advantage to a builder, working with that kind of a designer. So
okay, one day I want to pick your brain about, like, what is it like for, I guess I'm just all of a sudden I'm just like, what if there is a designer out there who doesn't even like think that, they're so used to working with builders who aren't the way that you are. I don't know. All of a sudden my whole paradigm is shifting, not like and I'm adopting a new way of thinking, but I'm just like, what if there are designers out there who are just like, that is not my experience at all? But we'll save that conversation for another day. And that's just not our experience, you and me. We've had this, shared experience that we've been talking about, and we find massive value in that both ways. Yeah. Garrett's on
absolutely
my list of preferred builders for sure. So it's always fun to work on a project with you.
Yeah, you as well.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and going through all the pain of technology to get here.
Yeah, for me it is.
No, it's awesome. You do a great job. You're like when I tell people who my preferred builders are, I always say it's not just that they do a good job professionally, but they're good humans too. So that's where
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, and keep up the good work. And I appreciate all the feedback that you give me, and for the good products that you produce for this industry.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Garrett. Good luck.
All right. Okay. We'll see ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with me on Not a Licensed Architect. If you're ready to stop second guessing yourself and start owning your place in this industry, make sure to follow the show and share it with another designer who needs to hear it too. And if you want more real strategies and floor plan tips you can actually use, head on over to dostudios.co for more courses and resources to supercharge your residential design career. Remember, you don't need a license to design a home or a life you're proud of. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next time.